hero archetypes, kind of the jobs that heroes need to do in a game of Dota.
Well, Jenkins, aren't you talking about roles? Isn't that what roles are?
Not really. In fact, that's actually one of the biggest reasons why I think a lot of people lose MMR, and they don't even realize a lot of people stagnate. They're playing really well. They're genuinely good players who are playing really well. It's just that they're picking heroes where their draft in the game doesn't fulfill all the jobs that need to be done in that game. Even though they picked a hero that's perfectly reasonable in their role, they're not doing a job that's needed. Basically, the TLDR is if you pick heroes in a role that fit that role, but fit the same archetype where you do all of the same jobs as somebody in another role, you are griefing the game without even realizing it. Healer/save heroes. So to give you an example of these heroes, we have Oracle. This is a save hero because what you do is you sit in the trees, you wait for the enemy team to go on your team, and then you save them. So Oracle, this is a 5 position, maybe 4 position, but mostly 5 position save hero. And to give you an example of a hero who is not a 5, because you might be thinking, oh, that's mostly 5s, right? They're healers. No, definitely not. OD is a core position, exclusive core position, never ever played as a support, who is also one of these save heroes. If you don't go on an OD first, he will win the team fight for the enemy team because he will just astral whoever you go on, and whatever your initiation was will be pathetic. He will trump it. And then on top of that, he does a lot of other things. But OD is a great save hero from not the 5 positions. But the second job that we're going to be talking about is disablers. So there are 3 different types of disablers in Dota 2. There are instant disablers. Actually, there are 4 different types of disablers in Dota 2. Some of them more important than others. There are instant disablers, there are follow-up disablers, there are BKB piercing disablers, and then there are breaks. These are kind of the important ones right now. So the instant disablers are heroes, very obviously, that just instantly press a button. There's no cast time, and they have a stun on somebody. So Sand King is one of these heroes because you have Burrow Strike. This has no cast point. In fact, he's even better of an instant disabler because you don't even need a Blink Dagger on Sand King to instant disable people. He's got reach is what they would say. And then a support position instant disabler would be Lion. You have this Hex, and I would actually consider Earth Spike to be close enough to an instant disable because if you blink on somebody and you're really close to them and you Earth Spike the ground, there's a little bit of a cast point, but with ping and human reaction time being like around 150 milliseconds at best or whatever the current world record is, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to dodge a Lion Earth Spike. So that's why this hero is actually quite popular right now, is because he's got 2 instant disables, and there's a lot of heroes that really require you to instantly disable them. Follow-up disablers. So, okay, sure, you can instantly disable somebody so they can't get their spells off, they can't get their BKB off, but what happens next? What if you can't disable them for long enough and they get their stuff off and they heal to full HP because they have a Satanic, which is a very popular item right now, or they just get out of the fight because they have a blink and they bottle up to full HP. These are scenarios you want to avoid. So some examples would be Leshrac. This is a mostly core position. This is like a mid and a carry hero that has this split earth where you're very unlikely to land this without having some sort of setup, but nobody looks at a Leshrac and says, oh, this hero doesn't have disable. Of course he has disable. It's just not instant cast. You need some hero to set it up, or if you don't have setup for it in terms of a hero, that's why people pick up a Yule's on Lesh, and Sheepstick is very good for the same reason. There's no counter to being disabled in Dota, and that's why these instant into follow-up stuns are so good. And some other example that is more of a support position hero would be Lina. She's got the same thing. Light Strike Array, it's difficult to hit without having some sort of setup for it. It's not reliable, and so you'd want something to set up for it, but if you do have setup, Lina's great. She's got the chain stun for you and damage, which is very nice. So BKB piercing disable, this is one that's a little not as important to have in every single game. If the enemy team has a hero that has built-in magic immunity, or if your team is really heavily relying on magical damage, then having a BKB piercing disabler is quite good. Not magic immune. BKB piercing, because it is literally just about disabling people through their BKB so you can kite it out, and then your magic damage dealers or whoever it is that you're trying to get through that spell immunity period of the enemy team, they can do their damage. Bane, this hero has great magic immunity, piercing, disable in the form of his Fiend's Grip, and like I said, I should actually use the language spell immunity because this was changed in Dota a few patches ago, where there's a difference between spell immunity and magic immunity. Magic immunity means 100% magic resistance, which means you cannot take magical damage, and spell immunity means spells cannot be cast on you. And so this ability does magic damage, but it pierces, actually it does pure damage now, but like one patch ago, it did magic damage and it still pierces spell immunity. So that means it does damage even if somebody BKBs, because it pierces spell immunity. That's not magic resistance. Pudge is another example. Dismember, this is magical damage type, but it pierces through spell immunity. And so this would be another example, also in the support position. So to give you an example of a BKB piercing in the core position would be Magnus. And so once again, going back to the intro where it's like, you don't want to pick too many of these heroes at once. If you have a Magnus, you don't necessarily need to pick a Bane. It's not like, oh no, what if they pick Lifestealer? What are we going to do? Who cares? You have a Magnus. You don't need to worry about that. Break is the kind of last disable that I want to mention, just because it's currently really important. It's weird to not mention something like Silence in this. I would consider Silence to be more so follow-up disable in some way, because it's like if you have somebody or instant disable, but until the enemy team has a BKB, it's like a pseudo disable almost. But break is so important because there are extremely difficult to deal with heroes that there is absolutely no way to counter them without literally taking their passive and making it go bye-bye by breaking it. And so these break heroes are currently important just because these passive heroes that need to be broken are important. So that would depend on the draft. And if you don't have these heroes where you actually have a break linked to the hero, then you want to build a Silver Edge. So Viper's a break hero. Hoodwink is another break hero with the Sharpshooter, although it's a little bit worse on Hoodwink. Very similar to the instant disable versus a follow-up disable. The third job, I should say, of heroes that exists are the tanks. And there are two types of tanks, in my opinion. There are the beefy boys, and there are the lane cancer tanks. So the beefy boys are essentially heroes that run in first in fights, and they get things started. They're the crazy maniacs that are running up high grounds and that are being disruptive and being annoying and saying, hey, cast your spells on me. I'm going to put myself so much so in your face, being so annoying that you have to cast your spells on me, and I'm going to build items to make it so that when you cast your spells on me, they're worthless. And so some good examples of this would be Tidehunter. Kraken Shell makes him an excellent tank because he just literally dispels spells that the enemy casts on him. So that's a very effective hero to run in and tank stuff because you just nullify it, essentially. Pudge is another good tank because he gets Flesh Heap, and so you're very tanky. You have a lot of HP, you have a lot of HP regen, you have a lot of magic resistance. So he's quite great, and he has ways of healing. A position 5 that would be one of these disruptive tank heroes that runs up high grounds like a maniac would be Clockwork. You're also the type of hero to throw your body in first in a fight. If your team needs you to get vision of the enemies before you can go into the fight, and you are a tanky boy, if you're a Clockwork 5, your job is to run in and die. That is the tank's job. The second type of tank are the lane cancer heroes, and these heroes oftentimes are the same. Often the lane cancer heroes are beefy boys, and sometimes the beefy boys are lane cancer heroes. So these heroes, they feel toxic, they feel vile to play against. These are heroes like Venomancer. These are heroes like Necrophos, Bristleback, Timbersaw, where all of these heroes that when I say them to you, they evoke a kind of wincing reaction, it doesn't feel good to be playing against any of these heroes, even if they're doing remotely well. And it feels like you can run all 5 of your heroes at them, and it's not going to go well for you. It's going to go bad because they have some really annoying thing where if you go on them, it is so punishing. Like Timbersaw, for example, he's just so tanky, and you use everything on him, and he's not going to die. Tidehunter is another example. You literally cast spells on him. They get dispelled because of Kraken Shell. Venomancer, you're running into 6 different wards and multiple slows, and then he just ults you and he gales you, and even if you kill him, it doesn't feel good, and he's so tanky, so it costs you so much to deal with him. They are the perimeter for their team to farm on the map. They are the bodyguard. That is the idea with these heroes. Clockwork, for example, he is a beefy boy. He would want to run in and tank in fights, but he is not a lane cancer hero. You don't see a Clockwork in a lane and go, oh, I don't want to go up against him. You don't care. It's a Clockwork. Who cares? Tidehunter, however, oftentimes is both. You run in first in team fights and get stuff started, but also you're a hero that if you're somewhere and your game is going well enough, the enemy team can run literally everybody at you. They're not going to kill you. They're just going to get ravaged, and the game is going to turn around on them. So it's important to identify whether you're both or whether you're just one of them, and make sure that you're not trying to be some lane cancer hero when you can't. Even in some games on Tide, you're just not strong enough. You don't have enough items to be that lane cancer, because if you try to go form a perimeter for your team, well, the enemies kill you if you're not ahead, and that's not so good to feed. Whereas in fights, it's fine to feed because your team can actually get trades. So speaking of Tidehunter, the next category, the fourth type of job in Dota, is reach. This is something that Kyle came up with like 5 years ago or something, and I really love the language of reach. It's this idea of somebody's over there, I need to reach them. I need to get on them and get stuff started. And people would also refer to this as jump heroes, initiators. So there are three types of this. There are initiators, there are assassins, which PPD came up with that term, and that's another piece of language that I really love. I heard him say that on DPC. And there are counter initiators. So initiators would be heroes that basically run in and instantly get fights started. You don't necessarily have to have blink heroes, but blink heroes often can function as initiators just because that's literally what the blink does. It takes you from one place instantly to another. So Axe, for example, would be a good initiator, but to give you an example of a hero that doesn't build a blink, that is an initiator, Clockwork. This is a, once again, tanky, beefy boy, but also because of hookshot being instant, he is, and because he literally just targets somewhere and he's there, he can reach. If somebody's standing in a lane, he can actually go kill them. But like I said, there are different levels to this. There are different categories. There are different types of initiators. There are different types of jump heroes, because I would say these are the initiators. These are the heroes that literally initiate the fights. And then there are assassins. So assassins are the type of heroes, and this is once again PPD's language. Absolutely love this term. Assassins are heroes that once a fight has started, they assassinate people. They kill them. So Phantom Assassin is a really good example of this, because if you're running around initiating on Phantom Assassin, like as in you are the Phantom Assassin and you're starting fights, you're probably doing something wrong. Phantom Assassins are not walking around getting blink daggers, jumping on people. Like, you want to one-shot people, but you want the right hero to reveal themselves. You want to kill the backline sniper. You want to kill the backline Lina. So you let the initiators go in, you let the tanks, the beefy boys run in, and then you assassinate somebody off of the information that they give to you. So Phantom Assassin will be like a carry assassin. But of course, there are offlaners that do this. There are mids that do this. Storm Spirit is arguably the single best mid assassin hero, because it's like the Clockwork hookshot, except much better, where you literally press ball lightning somewhere and then you're there and it does damage there, and then you can get out too. So it's very convenient for killing people. So this is one of the best assassins in the game. And these heroes are extremely important if there are backliners on the enemy team that need to be killed. So if there are instant disablers like Lion that are really integral for the enemy team's team fight because they set up for all of the setup stuns, then having assassins is really important. If there's an Oracle, if there's a Dazzle, if there's a save hero that needs to be killed because otherwise they just save whoever you're going on, then these assassins are incredibly important, and you can easily lose games because the enemy team has save heroes and then you just don't have any assassins to deal with them. That's one of the most frustrating ways to lose games, where basically if that happens, what you need to do is get a blink dagger. If you're a Juggernaut and blink dagger is not really that good of an item on Jug, doesn't matter. You have to get one, because that's just how you have to deal with these backline heroes, which are mostly save heroes and also these instant disablers. On top of that, that brings me to the last type of initiator or jump hero in this job, and that is the counter initiators. So these are heroes that they jump in and they have reach, and sure, most of them probably can initiate, but you probably don't want them to. And the reason for that is because these counter initiators, they exist in a class of hero where usually they are considered counter initiators because their spells are so powerful once the enemy team reveals themselves that they can single-handedly win the entire team fight by just being patient. Patience is absolutely crucial for these heroes. I do want to say they are currently not very popular, and I think a big reason for that is because a lot of them have very long cooldowns, which makes them unpopular, because Dota's a lot about persistent fighting right now, as well as there are a lot of blink canceling heroes, and basically every one of these counter initiators needs a blink to get their ability off, because otherwise they would be way too OP. So Earthshaker is a great example of this with Echo Slam. This ability can very easily single-handedly team wipe, but it's got a long cooldown, and this is another hero that if you're an assassin, you would look to jump, because the more a hero is able to just instantly win a team fight by doing some action in that team fight, the more value you should give them, and the more value you should place on assassins in the draft and on itemization to be an assassin in the game. So another example of a counter initiator would be Enigma with Black Hole. Faceless Void as a carry to some degree, especially if you have really good combos with the Chronosphere. He would be a decent counter initiator where you have some Centaur or Clockwork or any other beefy boy run in, and then boom, Faceless Void hits a big 5-man chrono and you win the game. So it exists in every role, and it's really nice to have. It makes it really easy to fight if you have some crazy counter initiator, because it's like, oh no, we're losing the game, guys. We have a 10k gold deficit. Oh, thank goodness we have this counter initiator, because these heroes, their fighting is so good that no matter how badly the game is going, you can turn it around. And that's kind of the appeal of these heroes. Although, like I said, it's kind of fallen off recently. The next job that I want to talk about is wave clear. There are two types of wave clear heroes. There are split pushers and there are tower defenders. And both of these are incredibly important right now because towers are super hard to push and creep waves matter a lot, because they literally make towers immortal. So backdoor effectively immortal. So creep waves matter a lot. They've mattered for a long time. And also there's tons of little tree hidey holes to hide in. So if you're trying to farm a creep wave, you might die. So it's really important to have heroes that are good at doing these things right now for those reasons. So you have split pushers. These are heroes that can instantly kill creep waves and do it safely. So Puck is a good example of one of these heroes. So why is Puck so good at split pushing? Because if you want to kill a creep wave, all you do is you walk out, you orb, you waning rift, you phase shift, and then you ethereal jaunt. And there's about a 0.2 second window, or whatever the combined cast time of the orb and the waning rift is, where you can go on a Puck. So if you're not instantly there with an instant disable, predicting in a 5-head play that Puck is going to be there at the exact time that you're there, you're not going to catch the Puck. And so this is exactly why Puck is really good at doing this. So another hero that's good at doing this, but in a different way, the split pushing, is Nature's Prophet. So this hero is good at split pushing because you don't have to do it. Your trees do. And so if the enemy team wants to stop you, they have to kill the trees. And that's annoying because it's not a hero. They give almost no gold. You can TP behind creep waves and just cut creep waves, and then they have to TP back to their own base to get you, and that sucks. So that's how this hero does it. So he does the same thing. He clears creep waves and he does it safely, but he just does it in a different way. So that's what these split pushers can do, is they clear creep waves and they can do it safely. That's what's important about these heroes. And then on top of this, we have the tower defenders. So these are heroes where maybe you're not so good at sitting in the trees and blowing up creep waves instantly and playing aggressively and forcing tower pressure on the enemies. But if the enemy team comes into you and they try to push into you, it's really difficult for them. So a hero like Keeper of the Light is really good at this because he's super good at defending. He can nuke waves and burst them instantly, but you're not like a Puck where it's very difficult to kill you. If you catch a Coddle, boom, he's dead just instantly because he's pathetic and squishy. With a Puck, it's hard. Puck is too mobile. Nature's Prophet, it's hard because he can be anywhere. He uses trees. So this hero is really good at defending towers, but not necessarily good at clearing, split pushing. And to give you another example, Puck. That's another hero. Puck, most of these split pushers are, at least the ones that burst waves with spells, these heroes are also good at defending towers. So Nature's Prophet is not so good at defending towers, though. So you can see how some of these jobs, some of these heroes can do multiple jobs and others can't, even though they can do one of the subcategories. They can't necessarily do the other one. The next job that we have is DPS. And there are 4 types of important DPS in Dota currently. honestly, this is probably the least important role to concern yourself with currently, or the least important job to concern yourself with recently. And the reason for that is because they've added in a lot of Aghanim shards lately. They've added in a lot of Aghanim scepters, and level 25 and level 30s are ridiculous, just because of buffs and Valve trying to make the late game really hectic and crazy. And so basically, if you go late, chances are you'll have a bunch of DPS. That's just how the game is scaled right now. And so this doesn't matter so much, but still it's important. It's important to know, especially the subcategories. So you have burst damage, you have sustained damage, you have spell immunity piercing damage, and then you have armor piercing damage. And some of these are more important than others. So some burst damage heroes, you have like Lina, Sven. These heroes, if somebody needs to die instantly, you can do it. So the more, the less disable you have, the less follow-up disable and instant disable you have, the more burst you need, because you have less time to kill people. So that's all that really matters. But there's also quite a lot of disable in Dota currently, and there's items you can buy to disable. So sustained damage is fine too, which is the second type of DPS in Dota. And so sustained damage would be something like a Medusa or a Bristleback or a Venomancer, these heroes that output a crap load of damage, but it's just something that they do over a long period of time. So a hero like Juggernaut, for example, does a ton of burst damage, but his sustained damage is not as good as something like a Medusa, who's just going to sit there. Her right clicks, she doesn't care. You know, she doesn't need any ability to do a crazy amount of damage. It's literally just her right clicks. Whereas Jug, it's like his burst damage is in his Omni Slash. Although his sustained damage is definitely not bad, but it's not on par with the Medusas. And then spell immunity piercing. The only reason that this is a concern sometimes is that if you don't have some sort of spell immunity piercing, either disable or damage, then the enemy team can just get a BKB and then they win the game. So if you have a bunch of instant disables and if you have a bunch of BKB piercing disables, then you don't really need to care if all of your damage is magical, if none of your damage goes through spell immunity, because you just disable them and then they can't use spell immunity. So that's always easy. So spell immunity piercing, once again, we go back to some of the same heroes we've talked about already. Bane is a great example of a hero that somebody BKBs, you just grip them. Juggernaut. So that's a bit of a different approach. So many BKBs, you don't grip them, but you Omni them, and it doesn't care about this spell immunity. So it's nice to have something that goes through spell immunity, so that way when it does come out, eventually somebody gets a BKB, you don't just lose. And then there's armor piercing, and these armor piercing heroes, there's tons of them. Like basically every support, most offlaners are armor piercing, and by armor piercing, all I mean is magic essentially. So if you have Sand King, this is an armor piercing hero. If you have Timbersaw, it's pure damage. That's an armor piercing hero. Draw Ranger literally pierces armor with her ultimate. So these heroes are important because if you are playing against something like a Terrorblade who gets like 60 armor by the late game, and all you have is physical damage, which is very rare by the way in a lineup, and this is why I said this is not as important as the other jobs. But if you're playing against a Terrorblade and all you have is physical damage and he has 60 armor, you just lose. There's no amount of minus armor you can buy where that's efficient to deal with him with these heroes. You need to have some sort of spell damage to kill him. So, or pure damage, or armor piercing in some way. So finally, we have the last job in Dota, and it's a very important one. Objective hitters. Building hitters, that is the first sub role, sub job. I keep saying role, that's a mistake. That is the first sub job of this job, the subcategory. It would be building hitters, and then you have Roche hitters. So building hitters like Leshrac and Drow Ranger are incredibly valuable right now because tier 2s are super hard to kill. They have been buffed a lot. They do a lot of damage. They have split shot for Gaben's sake. I don't know why they have that, but they do. And they're very important to take because if you take them, then it means that you can get outposts, and outposts are a very big source of experience. So tier 2s matter a lot, and they're hard to take. So building hitters, very valuable. And then Roche hitters also are very valuable. So that'd be Ursa, that'd be Slardar, minus armor heroes that can amplify everybody's damage on Roshan, or Ursa that can literally just solo it. These heroes are also really valuable, particularly because the second Roche is super duper powerful. It drops 3 items. It gives you an Ag Shard, gives you a Cheese, gives you an Aegis. It's nuts. So everybody's playing around Roche, everybody's valuing Roche right now, and so having a hero that can actually amplify the damage to Roshan. Undying's another one from a more support position because he has the damage amplification from Flesh Golem, so of course everybody hitting is going to do a ton of damage to Roche. He's very good at taking that objective. With all of that being said, there are plenty of heroes that fit in a lot of these categories. And generally speaking, when a hero is getting first phase picked in competitive, when a hero is considered truly overpowered, it is usually because they either do one of these jobs in a way where it's literally uncounterable, or they do almost all of them, at least the ones that are really important. And those are when you find the heroes are insanely OP. So to give you an example, Warlock, with his ultimate, is a ridiculous counter initiator. He is a ridiculous team fighter. He is honestly an initiator and a magic DPS hero because of the fatal bonds. So he does this overwhelming fighting, overwhelming team fighting. And what got changed about him was that he got this Aghanim shard that makes Shadow Word an AoE, and it grants move speed, and people are going for a Holy Locket. And basically and then a bunch of talents got changed where the Shadow Word heal is essentially super buffed. And so what happened is Warlock went from this hero that was exclusively good at team fighting to a hero that is amazing at team fighting, as well as a hero that is amazing at sustaining pushes. So he's a pushing hero. He's also a bit of a healer and a hero you have to kill first in the fights, because he can just heal somebody who can just then go siege. Like, effectively, you save people by putting a Shadow Word on them. In fact, your entire team. You're getting so much healing by putting that on your entire team. You can split push with Shadow Word AoE because it's also an aggressive spell, so you can clear waves. So basically, this Aghanim shard unlocked like 10 different jobs that this hero could now do. And then all of a sudden, it's first phase picked. And nobody understands why. It's like, why is this hero getting first phase picked now, all of a sudden, from this one Aghanim shard that got added? It's because it gave him like 10 more jobs that he can do. And that's how heroes are defined as OPs. How many jobs can they do really well? So I wanted to do a quick example of a very specific hero and just cover the individual jobs that they do, because I realize all of this can sound a little confusing because this covers literally everything in the game effectively. But Sniper, so what does this hero actually do in the game? So he's a disabler. He has instant disable in the Assassinate. I would consider it effectively instant disable. He's kind of follow up in the same regard. I think most instant disablers can be follow up, because you just follow up instant with instant. It's no big deal. He's not tanky, so you don't get that from him. He is actually a bit of an initiator to some degree, because you can set up for your team with Assassinate. It's not the biggest thing, but at least he's got a couple of ticks in that skill department. You know, it's not the absolute worst, but he's incredibly good at split pushing, because you drop a shrapnel on the wave, you can do it from 2 billion range away, nobody's ever going to catch you. And then you can also defend towers, because you literally just throw a shrapnel and it covers the entire AoE of the tower where melee heroes could be hitting. And then if that's not enough, you throw another shrapnel to where the ranged heroes are. So it's incredibly hard to push into this guy because of shrapnels and his Assassinate spam. Also, you have burst DPS with Assassinate, you have sustained DPS with shrapnel. You don't have spell immunity piercing, but you do have armor piercing because he is pure magic damage. And so these Terrorblade heroes look Terrorblade Naga, these high armor heroes look really pathetic when compared to a spellcasting sniper because of all the magic damage that he does. And to some degree, once you do go late enough and he has that attack range and he has maybe a couple of damage items, he is actually a objective taker. He's a building taker to some degree. Not as good as if you were to go like a full-on DPS build, but he does a little bit. So he does a bit of everything. Mostly he's about the team fighting, the damage, the disable, as well as the lane clear, which is a lot. He does these things very well, but he's very squishy. Not a tank, doesn't do any of that, so that's why he's not in the best place right now, but he does a decent amount. You have healers, you have disablers, you have tanks, reach and jump heroes, also known as initiators, colloquially, wave clear heroes, DPS, so like your carries, your mids, and objective takers. That's all the jobs in Dota. There are subcategories that you definitely have to look out for within those jobs, but that is the general overview of the jobs in Dota. So what I would recommend is in your pubs, make sure that at the very least, if the enemy team has some hero that is incredibly good at doing one of these jobs, that you make sure that you have something to counter it so that you don't just lose. If there's a backliner on the enemy team that really needs to be dealt with, you need an assassin. Maybe you need to be the assassin by building a blink dagger. Also, what I would recommend is the way that you make sure that your stupid teammates don't just ruin the game by picking things that don't do enough jobs. If you could pick heroes that do a lot of the jobs in the game, at the very least, a lot of the ones that are currently popular, then I would highly recommend that. And just to give you a quick overview of what the jobs are that are currently important, I would say that tanks are pretty important because high grounds in the game are just super abundant. Tower damage is very important because tier 2s are powerful. Spell immunity, piercing, is quite important right now because BKB is an OP item because of the 6 seconds instead of 5-second charge. Roche hitters are very important. Both types of wave clear are really important because creep waves are OP. And also, there are tons of trees to hide in. So both types of wave clear are incredibly valuable right now. Instant disablers are valuable because heroes like Puck and Ember are viable. So these heroes that are incredibly mobile. And if you don't have some sort of instant disabler, they just basically 1v5 you because you can never catch them. And then initiators and assassins are both very popular because if you don't have these heroes, then otherwise people can just split push you to death currently in Dota with all of the new trees and how creep waves work. So what's most important is that I think that given the patch that you're in, what you should do, what I would do if I was trying to boost myself as fast as possible in MMR, I would comprise a list after watching like 5 to 6 replays, something like that, and just think about like high-level replays and just think about what are people doing? What is really valuable right now? What are the jobs that these pros seem to be doing in every single game? And it's okay if you're wrong. You don't have to get it 100% right. That's the thing, is like these ideas that you have on the game are going to be different player to player. Pros are going to think differently from other pros. You're going to think differently from the pros, and that's okay. But what's important is that there are this malleable thing that you're building upon, and that you have this idea of Dota that is yours, and that it's some foundation to actually base your decisions upon. And so basically what I would recommend, like I said, is to keep track of what you think are the current most important jobs in the current patch. And then make sure that if you're drafting, you're looking, okay, my guy just first pick CM. That's a nuker. That's a DPS. That's magic damage. That's disable, but it's not instant disable because it's a root. Think about the things that your team are picking, and then make sure that the pick that you're doing does some other jobs. Or if you're doubling down on doing the same job even better, make sure there's a reason for it. Maybe you're doubling down on split pushing because the enemy team doesn't have good ways of dealing with split push and you get last pick. That's perfectly reasonable, but make sure you have comprised a list of what you think is good, what you think the most important jobs are, and pick and play around it if you can.